you. The main purpose of this Zoom is to record Arthur's recollections of the whole process, really, what he's been involved in, because otherwise, the way things are going, he's likely to get written out of history when his role. He's played the most principled role, I would say. Okay, that's my opinion. Throughout this case, and for his contribution to that struggle to be so disregarded, I think must not be lost. Anyway, without more ado from me, I was going to ask Arthur to reflect on various stages of the elopement, and everybody else could more or less keep quiet until they've got a specific question, just in case they wanted to jog Arthur's memory or something like that. It's really sort of over to you, Arthur. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but you've got a lot to bring, a lot of memories that I think need to be recorded. So from the outset, is there anything you particularly wanted to put on record what happened during the dispute that you thought was of particular note during the active dispute? There might not be. There doesn't have to be anything particularly useful that you'd like to point out at this stage, because it was your role only became particularly significant a little bit later on.
He just wants your thoughts on.
Pardon?
He just wants your thoughts on how it started off, how you got involved, what your earliest recollections are, and stuff like that.
Well, it was a general strike, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was general strike. Yeah.
And we came from the North Wales area, and there's also the Merseyside lads and all that, yeah. And we all came together. Can
you get this phone?
The thing that concerned me was what was said after about what's my thought now?
But you were involved with our first solicitor, who was good, Campbell
Malone.
You were Campbell Malone, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you actually drafted the first bloody petition or something, didn't you?
To the CCRC.
Yeah, to the Criminal Cases Review Committee.
And then the case was knocked back, and it was sent to Campbell Malone.
That's right.
And what's his name? Going to nicked it, didn't he?
Who?
The bloke who's taking all this stuff.
The new solicitors. No.
He's gone and handed it over to his solicitors. He was involved with Eileen, wasn't he?
I can't think who it was. Who was it? Who was it? Once Eileen Turnbull got involved, it all went skew if she
he's well known, this bloke.
Oh,
you're talking about Bernberg, Bindmans, I should say, Bindmans.
Yeah. Bindman was they were the other solicitors, yeah.
They were Eileen solicitors.
That's right, yeah. But Bindman's was recommended to Eileen Turnbull by I think it was Ken Loach, actually. But Loach wouldn't, obviously didn't know what was going on. But I think she said it was Ken Loach who recommended. But also Campbell Malone was really involved, and he's kept in touch with us through all these bloody years, hasn't he? Yeah. Al Campbell,
Just to remind people, the basis of your original appeal that you wrote to Campbell Malone, because that was the crucial evidence. What was it that got you so angry that you felt the need to get hold of Campbell Malone for the appeal?
He said, what made you so angry about going on, which made you get in touch or do whatever you did to Campbell Malone, whatever contact you had with Campbell?
I've been in contact with the Campbell for a while.
Now, what I mean,
Steve, could I possibly help, perhaps jog Arthur's memory? My recollection, and I may be wrong, but my recollection was Arthur has been like a torchbearer for the pickets throughout this case. And I think before he got back in touch with me, he approached the Criminal Cases Review Commission and put his own submission in. And I think one of the things that particularly troubled Arthur, you may remember, was the sequence of the photos. If you remember, the police relied on photographs taken by the press. And at the first trial, they presented them in a particular order that they thought showed a story, a sequence of events. And we subsequently found out that that was not the correct order, because we obtained
you mentioned
the negatives.
That the photographs were shown in the wrong order, which was right.
Do you remember that, Arthur? That was one of the issues I think you raised with the CCRC right at the beginning. The way that the police had altered the sequence of photographs to try and fit in with the narrative to pinpoint Ricky and Arthur and the others as being ringleaders, when in fact they manipulated the order incorrectly. I know that was one of the points that you were particularly troubled about. I don't know if that's how you recall it.
Is that how you recall it? You altered the photograph.
Well, what troubled me was the result when we were cleared, and to give the reasons why they were cleared. And they were cleared because the police had destroyed all the witness statements.
Yeah, but I'm going back to before we got to that stage, when you were on your own, you know, trying to persuade the Criminal Case Review Commission to look into the case. This was before I got involved, before Eileen got involved, before Ricky got back on board.
I made a submission to the...
Yes, you did, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you had the results of it.
Yeah, I think they knocked it back, as I remember.
Yeah, knocked back, yeah.
And then we started again.
So let's just read.
That was how I remember. That was what my recollection, that you were very troubled by the sequence of photographs. Was it the Shropshire Star? Am I right? Was that the newspaper that covered the pickets?
Yeah, it was a Shropshire Star, and the photographer's name was Bagnall. And
that's right.
I've met Bagnall in recent years, and he said anything at all he can do to sort, if we want anything, to get in touch with him, because he's still got photographs. But yeah, I've met him a couple of times since. But he was the photographer for the
Ricky, could you just recap what Campbell just said on behalf of Arthur, just for the video, just to recap how it was. What angered him was the disordering, the deliberate disordering of the photos that prompted him, an ordinary working class man, to write to the CCRC. That's the bit that we want to get on the video, preferably from Arthur, but if not from Arthur, from you.
Yeah, but I think you should say that, Arthur. What sort of riled you was because what you started, what you found out about the photographs, that really started off the search to say that in my eyes, this is a set up job, because you discovered that the photograph was sent in the wrong or presented in the wrong order. Yeah. So we want you to say that.
Well, it appeared that the photographs were all presented in the wrong order.
Yeah.
And it stuck out like a mile.
Okay, so that was what triggered it, and I think we more or less, unless there's any particular that you wanted to say about what happened during the trials, either one of you really, so long as you keep it like short, so that we, for the video, when it comes to, when we come to present it, it don't want to be too long. That in other words, the key moments in the trials, anything that you wanted to recall.
We were in separate trials, don't forget. There's 3 separate trials, isn't there?
Yeah, you talk about your trial, and I'll talk about mine. How did your trial go? Was any sort of, did anyone challenge anyone like me and Desi did when we were there?
I don't think so.
No. But these were just they were just using the first couple of trials to prepare themselves for the big trial and to sort of give sort of light sentence out or whatever it was. But we were actually lambs to the slaughter. That's the way it's got to be. We were lambs to the slaughter. I'd never been in a criminal court like that in front of a judge and barristers and juniors and people like that. And what I found out is like was the biasness of the judge. He was incredible. He was absolutely. He didn't have a clue. And as a sort of non-professional person watching the case, he was having things explained to him by John Platts Mills or David Turner Samuels or Keith McKyle on points of order. Because I don't know if it's true, but we were told he was an ecclesiastical barrister who'd been elevated, he'd been made up to take this big court case. And he didn't have he seriously, genuinely didn't have a clue. He didn't know what it was. But for me, now, in recent times, very, very recent times, what's come out that annoys me, and it flabbergasted me. We knew my phone was tapped. We knew that. We knew that when the trial was halted for a day or a couple of days due to someone's illness, we were allowed to go home. I wasn't allowed to leave the house. My family weren't allowed to leave the house. There was a police car parked in the driveway. We couldn't have visitors. We couldn't even take the kids for a walk. That was it. We were prisoners in our own homes. My black telephone, which the old-fashioned black Bakelite phone in them days, was hacked. And I remember speaking to the operator and saying, listen, I've just had a conversation with a colleague of mine, a lad called Billy Burns, and I've just picked the phone up again and I've heard the whole conversation being played back. And she said, oh, yes, we know. There's an electrical fault on the line. There's an electrical fault on the line. That's what she said. It was absolutely ludicrous. But what has recently come out, which drives me to distraction, is me in the dock. There were 6 of us in the dock, as you know. Standing next to me was a fella called John Carpenter, who went round during the strike, giving speeches and we'll do this and we. He wasn't a building worker. He was not a building worker. He was a con man with a list of convictions as long as your arm. He was when the strike was called, he wasn't a building worker. By the time we started getting things organised, he had a union card and he had a job with the council. And he called himself Carpenter. His name was John Carpenter, but I had later on, I had his authenticity checked out. It wasn't his name. He changed his name by deed poll. And according to the lady who's an expert, she does all the big shows on the television, going back through people's things. She said she thinks he's changed his name more than once. So she couldn't go any further back. But he wasn't a building worker. He got a card. He got a job with the council. And he got a job as a carpenter, as a joiner for the council. He did not need to be out on strike because the council workers were exempt to carry on going around fixing people's houses and doing stuff. They were exempt, but he joined the strike. And it was during the strike, when I went to his house over to him, I found out he was a police informer. And I found out the name of the police fella. The fella's name was Brian Ginger Davis. Brian Davis was the detective who was his contact. And this fella used to go to his house several times. We said, what's he doing going to? Oh, it's like, I've had a parking ticket, or I've done this, I've done that. But I went to his house one day with Billy Burns. Now, Billy Burns played an active part in the building strike, and I still keep in touch with Billy, because I went to John Carpenter's house, and I was going to flatten him, because he had all, people had been sending postal orders, they were in them days. He was sending postal orders in, and letters of support, and he was pocketing all the money. And I went for him. And Billy Burns stopped me. And honest, but he was, even after the strike, he was ripping people off. His exploits were all over the bloody Wrexham leader. One young couple, he took some money off them, took the roof off the house to reslate it, and then disappeared. He had a list of convictions. And apparently he was an artist on the clubs. He was an illusionist who had an office in Wrexham, and he had an office in Shrewsbury. So this is where we should be going, because when the judge gave his summing up, he pointed to John Carpenter and he said, "Mr. Carpenter, you are the most intelligent of these people.
I remember that.
You shouldn't be here."
Yeah.
And but when it came to reading his when it come to my antecedents, just said no previous, nothing at all. When it come to Carpenter's, it took him half an hour to read the convictions out. And he's saying he was the most intelligent. He was a professional con man. And the establishment knew, the establishment went along with it, that they knew he was an informer to Brian Davis, to Ginger Davis, the detective.
Well, that was worth getting on the record. That really was, yeah. And less than the highlights during the court proceedings, I was going to go on to the period. Anything to say about the campaigning whilst the Tories were still in? Because it all went quiet when the Labour got it, didn't it?
I don't know. See, there was a lad called Mick Abbott who started the Shrewsbury campaign, and he was a go-getter. And there was a lad called Harry Chadwick invited Eileen Turnbull to be the secretary of the Shrewsbury Committee, of the Shrewsbury Defence Committee, and then things started to change. Things went downhill. She eventually got rid of every single member of the committee and had her own people taking the places. And I have never seen an account. I've never seen a sheet of what came in, what went out, what was spent. The only time that expenses were discussed or money was discussed with me was when Eileen Turnbull come to me and asked me if I could lend her £9,000, which I did. Of course I did. I lent and it was paid back in full over a period of time, obviously, in installments. But apart from that, I had no one had any input. And during that period of time, there was at least 2 reputable film companies came up to do the story. And I was there on one occasion when the fella came up. I think it might have been in the Casa, in the back room in the Casa. It was somewhere. And she almost threw the fella out.
Good God.
She insulted him. She insulted the filmmaker. She said, no, we don't want it. We don't want to. And then she had the cheek to ring me and ask me if I could get Jimmy McGovern to do a script so she could send it to Ken Loach. Now I see Jimmy McGovern every week. We're real close pals. I go to football with him every home game. I've got a photograph of me and him in our office. Jimmy McGovern, honestly, he said to me, if she comes near me, I will not touch her with a barge pole. Because I told him. Oh, well, I told her. I told him. But when she got rid of everyone, the first one she got rid of was Mick, with Mike, Mike Abbott. She got rid of him. And then I remember I was sitting here in my house where I am with you now, and it came on Merseyside TV that Eileen Turnbull has just been awarded the OBE. And I went, what? You're joking. She can't, no, that's something. Anyway, so I phoned Harry Chadwick, who up till she took over, he'd been a real good member. He was Mick's mate. And I phoned him up and I said, Harry, I said, what's this? Eileen Turnbull's took the OBE. He said, it's a wind-up, Rick. It's a wind-up. I said, are you sure? He said, I'm positive. I said, well, will you do me a favour? Will you ring her and find out and ring me back and let me know? I'm still waiting for that phone call. Anyway, as the years have gone past and I've spoken to him, he said, I did speak to her, he said, and I was disgusted, and I told her she had no rights to accept it. And it's a bit late, the horse is gone, you know, the horse is, you bolting the stable door, the horse is gone. But she completely destroyed the committee. It became a one-man circus. And everywhere we went, I remember having the photograph taken. We didn't know at the time, but she was getting ready to do her book. And we were in the town hall, and we were all standing on the stairs for the photograph. And we didn't know at the time. I never gave it a thought. And there was a fella there. Oh, what was his name? He was Eddie Roberts. Oh, Eddie Roberts, who's been quite active in the Dockers trade union movement. And he's on the step below me, and we had a photograph taken. And the next thing is, I don't know, they must have had words. A couple of days later, he was told to hop it, scram. We had the photograph retaken with someone else standing in his place. I couldn't believe it. How could you do that? She chased him and someone else, and we all had to be in the same position. And of course, when you don't know what's going on, you just do as you just say, yeah. And he wasn't there. She put someone in his place.
She's a very clever person, sly person.
Oh, she's very sly. She's very adept, yeah. But I want to meet, and maybe you can help me here, Steve.
Yeah.
I want to challenge Terry Renshaw to a one-to-one in a public debate. And anyway, he can choose the place, you know, or I can get a venue. I want it full of trade unionists because he goes around the country strutting his stuff, what he done, what he didn't do. He was a shithouse. He hid from the police. Arthur will tell you. At one time, he went around telling everyone when the police were looking for him, he was hiding under Arthur's car or under his car. And then it turns out when the police came looking for him, he was hiding behind his mother's settee. He didn't have a clue. And now he's strutting around and we done this. He was Dessie Warren's right-hand man. Dessie Warren wouldn't have shook hands with him. He was a rat, a traitor. And there's a few more of them, by the way.
Well, I tell you what, we didn't. I was a mate of his. I thought he was a mate of his. And then he suddenly got under the spell of Eileen. And he became Eileen's #1 man. And it's then when I started to realise what a two-faced bastard he was, you know.
But it's not only him. Listen, I always had a lot of time for Mike Pearce. And Mike Pearce stood out because he was mixed race, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember when we were getting things organised, the strike was over, we'd done our time, and I went round and I went to his house. I'll just forget who was with me. There was someone with me. Anyway, I said to him, listen, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he went, listen, I'm going to keep my head down. I don't want to get involved. I've got a job. I think he was working in a nursing home, something like that. He said, I don't want to get involved now. I don't want to get involved. I don't want nothing to do. And I said, fair enough, and walked away. The next thing, he's all over the papers with Eileen and down to London and, you know, doing this and doing that. And outrageous.
There's one, the other key aspect, I can't remember exactly all the details but by what were the circumstances that led up to the hearing in Birmingham in April 2019, when you and Arthur, the two of you were in the well of the court. Your cases were being considered, but in fact you weren't being legally. We discovered you weren't being legally represented. So it's more to do with the proceedings. The legal proceedings, somehow your names had been excluded from the papers that were presented to that hearing, and you were present there, but your case was your individual cases were not being heard, as I understand.
The reason for that being, before that, there was a meeting in St David's Park in North Wales. It's like complex, a nice complex. And there was a meeting there, and there was quite a lot of people there. And Barry Scragg, who played an incredible part in the dispute, he was a UCAP member, and he's a councillor now. He played an incredible part, and him and a couple more lads turned up, and she barred them from the meeting. She wouldn't let them in to the meeting. She kept them out of the meeting. And that's where all the skullduggery went on then, see. You know, she could say anything, and those who were there then were like faithful travellers of hers, and they put their hands up and all like that. But I remember to this day that Barry Scraggs and the others had to stand outside in the car park. She wouldn't let them into the meeting.
And Barry was the main bloke.
Of course, he was the main bloke. It was him that went round the site I was on, the Wrexham bypass, and spoke, and that's then when I had to vote with the lads, and we decided, obviously, we'll join the strike. But Scraggsy went everywhere.
Yeah.
Scraggsy was one of them that was interviewed by Special Branch. And they used a trick to try and get into his house. They knocked on his door one dark night, and just a bloke there, a well-dressed bloke, and he went, "Excuse me, mate," he said, "I was walking past your front door." He said, "and I found this suitcase. Is this your suitcase? Can I come in and check it?" And Scraggsy said, "No, it's not my suitcase," and pissed off. He knew. For some reason, he just wanted to get in Scraggsy's house. And that was it. That's what he done. I'm telling you.
I didn't know about that.
Well, it was nothing now, because we're wiser. We're older and we're wiser. But then we weren't. We weren't. And that was it, you know. And of course, the propaganda was horrendous. My wife was 4'11.5". She wasn't 5 foot tall. And we had 2 small boys. And we were living in a little cottage, which I lost eventually. You know, they made me bankrupt or whatever it was in them days. And I drive past it now and I could buy a dozen, you know. And she was standing at the bus stop on more than one occasion and got smacked in the face by scabs. And I would give anything to find out who them 2 fellas were. 2 separate occasions. Smacked her in the face. 4'11" with 2 little toddlers waiting for the bus. The bastards. I wish I could see. I'd love to see them now. I'd love to see them.
I can imagine that, but I think Arthur had a role. I think Arthur had a role in somehow by standing up to Eileen Turnbull. I beg your pardon, I'm not saying that you didn't, Ricky, but I'm just trying to tease out how come your names were not included. In other words, Eileen.
She said
Turnbull,
we left. She said we left at that meeting in St. David's. Remember, she said, "Now look, we're going to appeal and blah blah blah." Now this is what she said. Now, if it fails, she said this could, and she looked at me. She said this could cost you £40,000. I said, "What?" She said, "We're going to appeal, and obviously we have to play cost. This could cost you up to £40,000." And I said, "Well, it's not going to cost me a penny." I said, "Because I'm not appealing that way." And Arthur said the same, "Count me out." And so what she said, then she used it against us, said they decided they didn't want to go any further with it. She didn't tell them the truth, that she didn't want us there. I said, any £40,000 I've got will be going to my grandkids, not to some solicitor down in London or whatever. And that was why she got rid of she got rid of us too.
The other key thing, so that resulted in our day in court, when I mean your day in court, which I just happened to be present at as well. The ridiculous state of affairs where the injustices that you had been suffered along with others was being examined, was being re-examined, that you weren't being legally represented. I don't, perhaps it's just gobsmacking.
But let me tell you this, I know it's got nothing to do with the case or nothing, but when I wrote my autobiography, and it was warts and all, I had to do it warts and all, because I didn't want to do one, but I had to do one because someone was doing an unofficial one. So I said to Rita, "Look, I'm going to have to do one." She said, "Well, it'll have to be the truth." Anyway, I wrote it, and it went to a #1. It was a bestseller, outsold every other bloody autobiography went to #1 for 5 weeks and got nominated for Book of the Year. But in it, I mentioned Maurice Straith, the prosecuting counsel. I said he looked like one of them fellas out of a heartthrob from the silent movies. I said he was a thorough gentleman, eloquent, and I really gave him a nice thing. I said he'd done a wonderful job for his side. So I didn't run him down. I said he'd done a wonderful job for his side, and blah blah blah. And obviously, he wrote me a 3-page letter in reply, thanking me. A 3-page letter saying,
"He's sorry he put you down."
He said, "I would rather have had a drink with you than send you to jail." Now, Eileen asked for that thing, and I only got 2 pages back. Don't know where they are now, like it could be any bloody where. But yeah, he sent me a 3-page letter back. That was Maurice Straith.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Steve, can I just mention something? I'd gone mute, so when you were talking about, I just wanted to get on record, when you were talking about the proceedings that Ricky and Arthur were involved in, as I understand it, you're talking about the judicial review proceedings against the decision by the CCRC not to refer the case, which they agreed halfway through that they would look at the case again. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to get that on record.
I'm not sure. It's all a bit confusing to me now, to be honest with you. I'm not sure, but I know we had a fallout, and that was it. And she didn't like, and we started asking questions. And one
yeah, by that stage, by the time the judicial review was heard, you and Arthur had split effectively, or been split from the main body of the pickets.
That's right. Yeah.
By Eileen.
Oh, that'd be Eileen, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think what happened was that I think Ricky pretty well covered it by saying Turnbull chose to interpret their remarks as withdrawing from the case altogether, whereas they were, and therefore deleted their names from the papers from her papers. It's just that the other amazing feature, I think, remarkable feature of this these proceedings was the one culminating in the call that Ricky took from within the court, saying there's going to be a High Court proceeding that you're not represented in and you ought to be aware and get something done about it. And I know that was, I think at that stage, Ricky was possibly taking a bigger lead than Arthur. But I think that's worth getting on the record as well, using somebody else's words rather than mine, or Campbell's, actually, with respect.
No. But for me, one of the turning points for me is when I realised it was, this is all of it, was obviously the day of the sentences. The day of the sentences, and we're all there, and family were there. And so obviously 2 of my brothers were there to come and see the last day and that. And they were asked to leave the public gallery by a policeman. And he said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, my brother's in the dock. He said, yeah, but what are you really doing here? He said, I've just told you my brother's in the... He said, I know, but what have you really come for? Anyway, there must have been a bit of a row or whatever. Anyway, they went back in and sat in the public gallery. And then the guy with the hat on, with the thingy hat on, come in and call them both out again. And he said, I want to apologise. I want to apologise for that policeman for doing that. I said, he had no rights to do that. Anyway, they came back in. But then that is when the fight happened. Now, Eileen Turnbull would not believe there was a fight in the jury box when I was sentenced to 2 years. When they said 2 years, it was a fist fight. The jury foreman was, I think he was the foreman or one of them. he was in the second row, and he started punching the fella in front in the back of the head. Bang, bang, bang. Got up and run out. And another fella jumped up and they run out. They went into the jury room and they were banging. The judge was banging the thing and banging the thing. And he said, because Desi hadn't been sentenced, he still had Desi. I'd had the 3 2s. So he was going to do Desi next. And then he had to send for them to come out because he was going to then sentence Desi, you know. So Desi come out and then he got the 3 3s. But Eileen Turnbull wouldn't believe that happened. She said, that never happened. You're making it up. I said, Eileen, I said, I was in the dock. I said, I was the one who'd just been sentenced. She said, it never happened. I said, I'm telling you it did. So she said, who was your barrister? I said, a fella called Keith McCallum. She said, who was his junior? I said, a fella, what was his name? It'll come to me. He's a High Court judge now. Real nice guy.
David Alteras.
It was David Alteras.
David Alteras, yeah.
That's it, yeah. She wrote to David Alteras to find out. And he wrote back to her saying it's a case I will never forget because of the fight that took place after Ricky Tomlinson was sentenced. She was scuppered, but that's how far she went. And by the way, I've spoken to David Alteras since, you know, and he sends his regards. I made up for him because he was great. He was great. And
still in touch with him.
Hey?
I'm still in touch with him occasionally.
And I've got his
he's a close friend of a very close friend. And
that's good. I'm
in touch with him a few days ago.
Oh, lovely. Give him my regards when you see him, kid. But
yeah,
no, she would not believe that there'd been a fight. And then, of course, Sean Walton, his dad was one of the jurymen that was involved in the fracas. And it was him that went outside and cried. He cried. And Jim Nichol, you know Jim Nichol, a big good friend of mine. I speak to Jim quite often. Jim Nichols went to him, and it was him that told me. He said he went to him, and the fella said, I don't know whether I'll be able to sleep again. That was the juryman. He was, because it was we only got done on a majority, see. It was 8-4, as you know. It was 8-4. They were sent to a hotel, and then they'd obviously discuss the case and whatever. And 2 of them, within 10 minutes the next morning, had changed their mind, right? So it was now 8-4, 10-2, and he said he'd accept that. But what we didn't know, and I can believe this because the day the trial started, we were all taken, the 6 of us were taken into a holding cell. And John Platts Mills, David Turner Samuels, and someone else came down and they said to us, listen, if you plead guilty now, you're going to get fined £50. The union are going to pay the £50. You'll all be home for lunchtime, right? And 4 of the lads took it. And they come to me and I went, no, I'm not, no. I said, I've never been in trouble with the police before. And Desi Warren said, don't even bother asking me. So the other 4 then, to be fair to them, they said, well, okay. So that's why we all pleaded not guilty. Because otherwise the other 4 were going to take the 50 quid fine and that was it. And so when they were out, when they were out, the jury was out. And it was 8-4. It was 8-4. And they changed in 10 minutes. When we asked, according to Sean Walton's dad, who was a jury member, he said that the court usher come in. Because they changed just like that in 10 minutes. He said, I don't know what all the fuss is for. If they get found guilty, they're only getting fined 50 quid. And exactly what we'd been told. And 2 of them changed. Next thing is, we're in the hurry up car, getting cars away. Oh, yeah. It was, but I mean, it was. I don't, it's something I'll never forget, I suppose. But it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. And then to make it worse, me and Desi are different personalities. I like to think I've got a different sense of humour. Desi's dead. He's lovely. If you were getting marooned on a desert island and you had to take someone with you, you'd take Desi, you know. But he didn't have any sense of humour. He didn't have a sense of humour. And when we went in, Nick, they could pick on him dead easy, and he'd fall for it. He'd fall for it. Whereas I used to make a joke out of it, and they sort of left me alone. You know what I mean? He sort of left me alone, and well, I wrote about some of the things that happened to me, like some of the incidents. But he took it really bad, Desi. He took it really, really bad. And as I say, and I think you know about this, Campbell. They came to me, and because we spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, because we spent a lot of time, we wouldn't wear clothes, and we spent 31 days on hunger strike, and I was pretty ill, so I ended up in the prison hospital, and but then I got moved to Leicester, and that's where I met the fella that changed my life, really, the governor there. He was wonderful. He said to me, "Have you ever read this book?" And I said, "No, what is it?" "Dragons Out the Philanthropist." Changed my life, it turned it round. I've read it, and I've sent them since. I've sent them all over the world. I've sent them to Australia, to America, to Canada. I've even sent them to China. People have read about it and all like that. And so, as I say, poor old Desi and me, we were different characters, but the last time I seen him was horrendous. I know he sued when he came out because they were giving him the needle and they were giving him the liquid cosh, and I wouldn't take nothing. And I know when he come out, they give him a few quid, I think it's about 20 grand in today's money. It wouldn't be that. Then be 5 or 6 grand, I suppose. Anyway, it was terrible. Anyway, when he said to me, when I was in the clink, by the way, sorry, the governor said to me, "Listen, you've got a meeting, and I said, "Well, I can't have meetings because I won't wear clothes. So if you can't wear clothes, you can't have meetings." He said, "No, you've got a meeting." I said, "Look, no, I can't. I'm not wearing clothes. I'm doing what I'm doing." He said, "Look, it's in my office." I said, "Prisoners don't get it. Meetings in the governor's office." He said, "I want you there tomorrow." He said, "It's very important." Anyway, the next day I put a pair of shorts on. I went up, and there was 3 people in his office. Billy Jones, who was a joiner from Kirby. Alan Abrams, a joiner.
I know Alan.
Alan from over the water. And there was an MP from Birmingham. I think his name was Tom Litterick. Tom Litterick. Anyway, they're getting on and they're talking. And he said to me, after a while, he said, "Okay, now, Rick, we want you to go home." I said, "What?" He said, "We want you to go home." I said, "I'm not going." He said, "No, you've got to." I said, "I haven't got to." I said, "I've only got a couple of months to do." He said, "We're not worried about you. We're worried about Desi." Now, I didn't know how ill Desi was. I didn't know how ill he was. And he had another year to do. And that's what they said to me. They said, "Listen, you know what Desi is. If you do your full time, he'll do his full time. That means he's going to spend another year in jail and he's not well." And I said, "Okay." So they said, "Write him a letter and just say, but don't mention why. You can't mention why." So I wrote a letter and just said there, because prisoners are not allowed to write to other prisoners, you know that. Anyway, I wrote, "Dear Desi, listen, I'm thinking of giving up now. We've had a good go. We've been on hunger strike and we've been in solitary and we wouldn't wear clothes. I'm missing the kids now, so I'm going to get off if I can." And he sent me this letter back. Oh, I'd rather he stuck a knife in me. I'm serious. I would rather he stuck a knife in me. It said, "You cowardly bastard. We had a pact and you're letting me down." And, and I couldn't answer him. Obviously, I couldn't answer him. So I was released in, I think, the following day. And when it gets there, outside is Jim Nichol, the civil liberties lawyer, Marlene, my wife, a few fellas. I don't know whether Paul Foot was there. I think Paul Foot was there. But there was a fella there called Peter Carter. Now, Peter Carter was the best working class orator I've ever heard. Apparently, it turned out he was the industrial organizer for the Communist Party of Great Britain. And he'd go around all the sites saying, "Come on, we've got to get out, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to do that." And I've got the photograph. I've got the photograph of me and my wife. And as I say, I think that, I don't know if it's Paul Foot or whatever, Jim Nichols is there. And as I say, this Peter Carter, the industrial organizer, and that was fine. So I comes home and I go to Desi's house, and when I go to his house, he was living in a little Welsh village. It'll come to me in a minute. It was in Denby, yeah, but it had a little name. Anyway, there was a notice in the window for sale in his little cottage. So I knocked on the door, and Elsa come to the door. I said, "What are you? What's this?" She said, "I'm selling it." I said, "What happens when Desi comes out?" "Oh," she said, we'll get a caravan in that field." I said, "You can't do that." Anyway, she chased me, didn't she? So I couldn't write to him. And then there was something going on besides in his family, as you know. And I couldn't tell him that. He was having a bad enough time as it was. So I never got in touch with him. We never spoke for a long, 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 long time. And then one day, I had a little office then. I started doing a little bit of extra work, and I had a little office in town. And I went to work, and there was a note under the door. And it said, "Rick, Desi would love to see you. Here's his address." Now, it's months and months since I've seen him. So I got in my car and drove over to Chester. He was living in Chester. And I went to his house, and I went in the back way. The back was, the way it was situated, I pulled up at the back door. So I went in, knocked on the door, and a woman's voice shouted, "Come in." And I said, "I've come to see Desi." She said, go in. She said, "He's in the front room." So I went in the front room. And he's lying on a mattress on the floor. After he weighed about 6 stone. He had a rope from the floor into the beams in the ceiling. And he pulled himself up on the rope and put his arms around me, and he kissed me. And he said, "Do you know how long it is since we've met, Rick?" And I said, "Desi, I don't." And he knew to the day. He knew to the day. And he obviously knew I hadn't let him down. He knew I hadn't let him down. And he gave me a hug. And then the next time I seen him, the next time I was in his company, he was in the box. His funeral, you know? Yeah. It was awful. He didn't have a pick on him.
I did see him when he was right down.
Yeah.
I went to, I forget where it was now. I think it was in Hollywood. He was sitting there, and his face was blank as out. Didn't know who the hell we were. And he completely lost it, you know.
Well, I know he sued the government, didn't he? And he got
40.
No, I'm all right, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
He sued the government. He got a few quid. In today's money, I think worth about 20 grand, but nothing. But he was destroyed. He was absolutely finished. Honest to God, he was really, really finished. And what annoys me, not annoys me, but what I can't work out is Harry. I think he was very, very good for him, you know. And he used to go and push Desi in the wheelchair along the canal and all like that. And then for him to get involved with Eileen, because Eileen had no time for Desi or anything to do with Desi's stories or anything. So, but Harry Chadwick did. He used to go and, as I say, push him in the wheelchair along the canal bank and talk to him. But, you know, as they say, it's all water under the bridge, isn't it?
Now, but not to be forgotten, and that's what we're here for. And in particular, Arthur's contribute. Well, beg your pardon, only because of Anyway, anybody else want to just say anything at this stage?
I'd like to say something like that. The thing that surprised me was you've all seen the letter we had back after the cases were dropped, and the way it was worded that the police had destroyed all the witness statements. The reason why the case was dropped was the police had destroyed all the witness statements.
Yeah, but didn't they? If Campbell will know better than me, didn't they have new ones made? And they weren't bad enough, and they were destroyed. So they actually had a third one made, and that's outrageous.
Yeah.
Outrageous! It's a disgrace, honest to God. But can I just tell you something? I got asked by a fella, what's Paul's second name? Paul Heron. There's a lad called Paul Heron, and he's a solicitor, and a Liverpool lad, and he's great, and he knows all about the case. And he said to me, he said, look, there's this big meeting of the bigwigs, all the barristers, top barristers in the country. He said, would you just say a few words via Zoom like we're doing now? And I went, yeah. I said, by all means. Anyway, thanks, Reece. Anyway, it switches on, and there's this room, and it's full of top barristers. Or if they were QCs in them days, weren't they? They were QCs, not KCs now. So they're full, and the proceedings is opened by a High Court judge, right? And they're all taking them down, and then after a while, he said, then we've got someone here. We've asked him to say a few words, and there must have been 100 QCs there, though, honestly. And I said, "Hiya, my name's Ricky Tomlinson, and I've been savaged by the legal system." I said, but having said that, I said, I still believe, and I really still believe, we've got the best legal system in the world. I still believe that. I know there's one or two ooky cases, and now and again, the people in power, do dirty tricks. It does, yeah. But I still believe
those in power will dictate what happens.
Yeah. But I still believe we've got the best legal system in the world. Anyway, Paul Heron phoned me, and he said, listen, there's a top QC here, and he wants to thank you for your contribution. And he's going to send you a bottle of his homemade wine. And I said, oh, well, that's very nice of him. I don't drink wine, but Rita dines out on it. Anyway, this bottle of homemade, you've got to remember that, homemade wine comes. It's magnificent. It's a bottle. The cover is molded to the bottle, to the shape of the bottle. The person who sent it, who's a top QC, owns the vineyard in the north of France. And he sent it to me. And I tell you, I don't know whether he just drank it or well, I don't drink wine. But I thought that was a lovely gesture. And but I still do believe we've got the best. And I know some cases slip through the net that shouldn't, and we can reflect on it and just hope that it never happens again. But when, as you said just a minute ago, when it's a political thing, when the powers that be are involved, you've got no chance. Oh, let me tell you, can I just tell you this, Steve, though, before I forget? When one of them people who was waiting for me when I was released from jail was named Peter Carter, I told you, and he was the industrial organizer for the Communist Party of Great Britain, right? He's one of the best orators I've ever heard. He was, honestly, he could give it that. Oh, he was great. He could rally the troops. Arthur Scargill sent me The Enemy Within, the book The Enemy Within. Who's in it? Peter Carter. He was in the pay of Stella Rimington, MI5.
Bloody hell.
He was it's in the book, The Enemy Within, by Seamus Milne. And there it is, Peter Carter in the pay of Stella Rimington. Now, he ends up dead in a barge in the middle of Birmingham. Peter Carter. So I was doing a documentary there a couple of months ago on the same canal. And the fellow, the expert who was talking, it hasn't been on the telly yet, by the way. It'll be on the telly soon. And I said, do you know anything about this? He said, yeah. He said, we heard about it. He said, is there any information you can give me? What happened to him, where the body went or whatever, who found him? And he went, I'll be in touch. Never heard from him. The plot thickens. Yeah.
I think we've got some great stories there. Anything else? Anybody else to I think we should do another one a bit more formal when we go through the details of the legal proceedings. I don't know.
Well, that's Arthur's side. Arthur's into all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got any more reflections on the legal aspect of it, Arthur, before we wrap this part up?
I can't think. I can't think what you're looking for.
We're all men now, aren't we, lads?
Yeah.
We're all men.
It was only if there was something you thought there was not yet been said, Arthur. That was all. That was all.
The only thing is that the reasons why our case failed was that the police destroyed all the witness statements.
But yet new ones made.
That's enough.
But here's how bent it was, Steve. It was getting near Christmas time and the trial was coming to an end. And witness after witness was from the police. They come in and they were built like bloody brick shit houses. They were like rugby players. Big, strong, tough fellow. And they were saying, I was terrified. I didn't know what they were going to do to me. We all clubbed. They were crying. They were crying, giving that evidence. You should have seen them. And there was that many of them. They couldn't all give evidence because the trial would have overrun. And they worked it so that the trial finished as the same day, or round about the same time, as the building workers at their Christmas holidays. So there was no demos, no nothing. The lads had all gone home to spend Christmas. We went to jail, and that was it. It timed to perfection. There were still 30-odd witnesses to be called. And they said, that's it. So what you do?
Just one last thing. Another of the points, the legal points that Arthur made, I don't know what point he started making them, was this is about the red under the bed Granada transmission. I think it was you that first kicked that one off, wasn't it, Arthur? In other words, how the state had been colluding with the media to undermine.
Well, didn't they show it? Didn't they show it the night or the night before, or the night the jury went out? That's when they showed it in that area, in the Shrewsbury area. Yeah, also the schedule.
I beg your pardon, wasn't it Arthur the one that said that's got to be challenged? Did the challenge first come from you, Arthur, or did it come from somebody else?
The challenge, what was being challenged?
Photographs, you mean?
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about the transmission of that broadcast during the trial. So I thought, Arthur, you were one of the first people to challenge the legality or the whatever you want to call it.
No, because you'd done your time then, hadn't you? By the time we were still there and that was shown.
Yeah.
Arthur had been in and out then, Steve.
No, that's not right. That's not right. Sorry, Ricky.
What?
The Arthur's trial came after yours.
Arthur came after.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get confused because there were what Jim Arneson used to call the practice runs in Mould. Remember, there were some trials,
right.
And then there's an interesting legal point which shows the role of the government, the way they changed things between the two lots of trials. But then came the conspiracy trial with the six of you, and that they finished just before Christmas, 73, and then in 74, Arthur's trial and the others followed on. So the Reds Under the Beds was shown during your trial, and we did in fact object to the judge, but I don't think we perhaps objected in the right terms. What David Turner Samuels tried to do was to get the makers, ask Judge Mays, to hold the makers of the programme in contempt of court. And I think the judge wasn't interested, and I think he said something about, disregard it. But of course, and it wasn't a point that was taken at the appeal, and perhaps it should have been. but it was later on, much later on, that it became an issue again, an important issue, when it became apparent just how much government interest there was. The Ted Heath memo saying we want more of these, this sort of program. So it was raised at the time during the trial, but perhaps it could have been handled better. But one of the things that's always struck me as at the time as an indicator of how this was a political trial was at the time of the Mould cases, the defence were entitled to know the names and occupations of all the potential jurors.
That's right, yeah.
So that during one of the Mould trials, we were aware that a potential juror was a building contractor. In other words, somebody who would have a vested interest in opposing the strike and pickets. And we objected when his name got put forward, we objected. I think it was in the August, with your trial due to start in the September, Hailsham, was then the Lord Chancellor, changed the rules so that we weren't entitled to know the occupation of the jurors.
That's
so
right,
there was direct interference by the government in the way the trial was going to be conducted. Just a small thing, but being a lawyer, it struck me as significant at the time.
Well, they weren't letting anything go to chance, were they? So I mean, whatever they done, that was like putting the boot into what they done, and that was it.
Stacking the odds.
Has that judge ever done any other big? Has that judge ever done any other big case?
You know your comment about his ecclesiastical experience.
That's right.
John Platts Mills in the Court of Appeal, when we started the appeal, sort of mentioned him and said he was a most distinguished judge, particularly experienced in county court and ecclesiastical matters.
And we all said, "Oh my God!"
and it's true. He was promoted to do the job. It was his first major trial.
The bit I was trying to tease out, and it could be that I'm crediting Arthur for something that he's not, in this particular instance, not particularly due any credit for, was who first started writing about subsequently objecting about that transmission. At what stage did that start appearing in the appeal documents?
I don't know.
But we'll pass on that.
It wasn't something that Laurie Flynn wrote about, was it? You know, Laurie wrote. There's a guy called Laurie Flynn wrote a few things, and I'm just wondering whether.
I remember Laurie Flynn. What did he write?
Pardon?
Did Laurie write something about it?
I think it was right away. I think it was.
I remember Laurie Flynn.
Yeah.
It was more to do with what stage that entered into the legal process, the legal challenge, rather than the protests that might have been going on informally. It was at what stage did it become part of the formal legal challenge? I beg your pardon. I thought that was one of those things that would have rankled Arthur, and you know, like the disordering of the photos, and he would have made sure that it got reconsidered. But if that's not the case, that doesn't matter. It's not. That still doesn't detract from everything that Arthur did do.
Arthur started the ball off with the appeal thing. You know, and that was that. But as I say, we were all novices, Steve. We were novices. None of us. The only one who had any experience was bloody Carpenter. And he said even when he come out of jail, he went on ruining people's lives and taking money off young couples and stripping the roof off the houses and leaving them, and he got away with it. He got away with it scot-free.
And before we, you've been following this, okay? Have you? I'm just going to switch to Gary for a minute to see if there's anything he's got to say, because he's, you know, he was in it right from the beginning as well. I mean, I only was
right. Absolutely.
I'm on a Johnny come lately compared with Gary. Gary's not so hearing's not so good, so it's have I got him muted? I've got him muted. Oh dear, sorry. There we go.
What progress are we going to make now? Are we going to go to an appeal?
It's too late, isn't it?
Now, can you hear me? Just put your hand, your thumbs up if you can hear me, Gary. I'm not sure he can, because I muted him because it was some noise coming through, but I can't unmute him. I don't think I can unmute him. No, I can't. And with his wife not being in the room, I don't want him to be stressed. I think, anyway. Anybody else got any other comments to make at this stage?
No.
Yes, I would just like to know what the outcome's going to be. Are we going to go to appeal again?
You can't, can you?
Oh.
Well, I'm not the person to ask. Campbell, your best person to ask is going to be Campbell. But just to put on record here, the written judgment said that the convictions were set aside, not overturned. They were set aside because of the police fabrication, the police mishandling of the case. Which means, and in fact, I think the grounds for appeal were referred to in the written judgment, but it implies.
No, Steve, the convictions are quashed. I mean, those convictions have disappeared. All of these convictions have gone, as far as all of the people who were before the Court of Appeal. So Ricky's right. There isn't anywhere to go back to the court with these convictions. That's not to say that there may not be other issues in relation to things which weren't before the court. I mean, my own personal view was that it wouldn't meet the current criteria for compensation under the scheme for people who've been wrongly convicted, miscarriages of justice. But I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff that's not come out. There's a very compelling argument for an inquiry into the government interference in the case, but you can't use the convictions as a means of getting back before the criminal division of the Court of Appeal. That is over. It's been successful, even if you felt it was limited in the issues. Those convictions are gone. None of you have that conviction against you, whose names are on the Court of Appeal judgment.
I just thought that if the police had destroyed all the evidence, there's strong grounds. I mean, who gave them permission to destroy all the evidence?
Well, they were strong grounds, Arthur, and as a result of that, the conviction was quashed. You were cleared, Ricky was cleared, Des, posthumously was cleared. All of the people who before the Court of Appeal had their convictions quashed. Whether that answers everybody's questions is a different story. But I mean, you don't have a conviction for that anymore, Arthur.
Hey?
You've been cleared of that conviction. Ricky's been cleared of his convictions.
You and I have a different interpretation of the written judgment, Campbell, and obviously I'm on very thin ice when I refer to my interpretation. But the judgment said that criminality had clearly occurred. And that's the bit where the state was saying that the state was duty bound to tackle that criminality. And the case for the trade union movement is there was no criminality. That's our case. I don't necessarily mean it's a legal case, But it's the trade union case when they're involved in industrial disputes. That's not a criminal activity. But I don't want to drag this one out here. But that remains the fact that they've still got the anti-trade union laws on the books. Means starts from the assumption that if you're involved in industrial action, you already are a criminal.
No, I think the. I mean, I reread the appeal judgment yesterday, and I've got it in front of me on my laptop on another device. I mean, I think it was saying the issue was that it was accepted that there was some, perhaps some damage done, but the issue really was whether those pickets before the court were responsible for any criminality. And that was the issue. And it says here, it follows that under ground one, the convictions of all the appellants in trials 1, 2, and 3 are unsafe. Their appeals are allowed, and all the verdicts in relation to them are quashed. That was the job of the Court of Appeal to decide that. That was the only issue before them. I think they said somewhere at the beginning that the political issues is not for them. Their job is to apply the criminal law.
Today. One in London.
But I tell you what, listen, Steve, you've got no chance when you see the likes of the programme that's been on the television in the last few days about what the police done at Orgreave to them miners. They battered them. Nothing. None of them got charged. Can you imagine if that was the other way around? If the miners had had batons and had the police on the floor and battering them, it was unbelievable. If ever you had to describe a police state, just say, watch that thing of Orgreave. It was outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an essential link that I agree from the political link. That of course the trade unions find when they go into industrial action these days, as Des made very clear when he was in the dock, you're taking on the government now, because they will regard that as a political attack on the integrity of the state. But the reason why this business of class justice is now coming to the fore, it's not only workers as they go into collective dispute that find themselves guilty for things that they have not done. That's to do with the post office, to what's going on in the post office. I know that's stretching a point, but but this is a point where possibly for another day to have a longer discussion, and with possibly other people in the Zoom, about the failure of the British justice system, notwithstanding Ricky's respect for it, and indeed I have respect for it too. But it's desperately in need of repair. But anyway, it looks like we're coming, unless other people got.
Oh, Steve.
Yeah. Have a word with Arthur.
Hello.
Yeah.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Who just been to now?
Steve.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, coming through loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Okay, I'd like to say to Arthur, he's every right to be insulted by the results of the court, because I got a copy of the film from the Shropshire Star. My committee wrote to them, and on the film there is a number on every shot taken. And we've got them out of sequence, and Arthur's absolutely right. I worked in the film industry. They actually concocted the film in different sequences and actually put a script to it. They're making the last shot was when they were arriving at the site, and on the police evidence, they said they were arriving at leaving the site shouting "kill, kill, kill." Well, that was the number 30, if you like, and they made that number 1. So, and they built a script around that to absolutely frame the pickets. So they did that very successfully. Now, I know Campbell Malone challenged that, but I actually had a copy of the film because we wrote to the Shropshire Star and they sent us the negatives. And my committee spotted that the films are all out of sequence. And I sent them to Ricky. Hello, Ricky, how are you?
All right, Ted.
Arthur. So you're absolutely right, Arthur. Complete fabrication and frame up of the case. And I knew from day one you lads were not guilty. But I don't know whether you can hear me at all, because I don't know whether I'm talking to myself.
No, you're coming through.
Gary.
That's nice. Anyway, Arthur, lovely to see you. I wasn't one of the pickets. I used to speak to you regularly. My name is Gary Davis, South West London Shrewsbury Defence Committee, and we're still here because we know you haven't got justice. So I haven't wrapped up the committee, and we won't do until you do succeed in justice.
You know, it's you.
Yeah.
And perhaps then I can retire the banner with the flying angel on. Only that is the goddess of light, which says light and liberty. When it was outside the law courts, when Campbell Malone was taking your case on appeal, Ricky, you and Desi.
Yeah.
That's when the Fleet Street electricians should have actually come out on strike, but unfortunately they didn't, and a lot of other people.
I hear it pretty good, you know. I can't hear him very well.
And they let you down. So I formed a committee because, as you know, the official trade union movement dropped you right in it. They were told that if they took up your case, they would end up with costs. And if there was another strike, they wouldn't be able to pay for the picketing. So they dropped you, Transport and General Workers and UCAT. But we didn't drop you, and we're still here for you. And
bless you. Well done.
Anyway, thank you, Steve.
No. I think well done, Gary. That needed to be put in the record. I think we're getting towards the end. Ricky will certainly I'd be delighted to see what we can do about having the one-to-one with Renshaw.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's a tall order, Campbell, but I think this is about the how to tackle the from the working class point of view, if you like, the injustices that are still being perpetrated by the state, even though, as Ricky has acknowledged, there's a whole load of good judges up there. There's massive injustices still going on, leaving aside all the fraud that was reported yesterday. But maybe that's not something we can nail down today. But I think, should we draw it to a close?
Yeah, but we could do it again sometime, no problem.
Yeah. Well,
can I just sorry,
yeah.
Steve? Can I just say I want to express my personal gratitude to Arthur, because I always thought, I mean, apart from his role in this case, keeping alive over the years when nothing was happening, the sense of injustice. And I know Gary and people were doing keeping going, but Arthur was keeping the battle going. But I also considered he was a good friend and loyal when there were times when I didn't feel that I had a lot of support. I always felt I got it from Arthur. And I appreciate that. And I want him to know.
I'm thinking of buying Arthur a black cape and a white wig. So he get
him a decent bottle of wine from your pal.
Anyway, thank you. Those kind.
God bless you, lads. Thanks, Campbell. Everyone loved the bones of your kid.
Yeah. And but I mean, I don't know how I could even put the beginning to, my appreciation of everything. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, you're one of a tiny handful of working class heroes that I'm proud to know, Arthur. Proud to know.
God bless you.
Yeah. And Gary and yourself, Ricky. And
Okay.
Campbell from a different point of view, but yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up, and we'll see what we can do with the footage.
God bless you, kid.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. Take care, you all now. Take care. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.